I mentioned I was out the last couple of weeks on the road, and 2 weeks ago, October 1st, I guess that was, Dr. Claire Spears sat in, which I'm so happy about. I mentioned this prior to my not being here, that she's a professor in health policy and behavioral sciences in the School of Public Health over at Georgia State University. Um, and she has started and facilitates what they call the Mindfulness Living Lab there at Georgia State. So, if you're interested in her work, the research that she's doing, and some of the work they're doing at Georgia State, you can find them. I put a link to their Mindfulness Living Lab on the YouTube page. And last week we had Tyona Azilio, who facilitated the gathering last week. Ty is a seasoned mindfulness teacher, a clinical social worker, and a certified life coach. And you can find more about her work on her website, Metanoia. That's also linked in our on our YouTube channel. So today, I wanted to speak for a few minutes about two aspects of mindfulness that often kind of uh, maybe confused, and that is the idea of attention and awareness. And we sometimes use those two terms interchangeably, but they're not really the same thing. Attention has more to do with um, directly with the practice itself, that we practice paying attention. And awareness is something that emerges on its own, that the practice of tuning in our attention helps us to experience pure awareness. Jon Kabat-Zinn clarifies the distinction when he defines mindfulness as the awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. And so you notice in that definition how attention is related to practice. We pay attention, we practice paying attention. And then awareness arises. It's already here. We can be aware at any time, but it's cultivated through the practice. So it's as he terms it, the awareness that arises. So we might think of attention as the mind's kind of spotlight. It selects and it sustains focus. Say, for example, focusing on the breath, or paying attention to the breath. And when the mind wanders, we bring our attention back. And that's kind of the work of mindfulness. And then awareness, we might think of as the whole field in which that experience appears and opens up. And it's a receptive kind of sensing or knowing or understanding of whatever is that naturally existing. It sounds maybe a little technical, but I think it's important to make these distinctions and understand what we're doing in the practice and what's kind of doing us in a way. The Buddhist scholar Bhikkhu Analayo has said that in early Buddhist sources, attention and awareness are related yet distinct functions. The way he says it is attention aims and orients, while awareness remembers and clearly holds the present experience in view. Another aspect of these two differences, I guess, in these words, attention and awareness. One other distinction is that attention is dualistic. There's a subject, me, the one who's observing, and then the object that's being observed, the breath, say. And so when it comes to awareness itself, and the other word you can say for awareness is mindfulness, that distinction tends to disappear, the observer and the observed. And so there's a lot of connecting, which we see in the research. That's not separation. So again, from Bhikkhu Analayo, it says that in non-dual mindfulness, which is another word for just pure awareness, non-dual, it doesn't have that dualistic aspect. And he says that we enter that mode of awareness and it leaves behind the subject-object split. Tara Brach, the Buddhist teacher, says this in another way too, and she invites us to rest in non-dual awareness, which she calls the space of presence, non-dual awareness, the space of presence that's always here. And we see this in Christian contemplation too, from the Christian contemplative teacher Cynthia Bourgeault. She arrives at the same kind of non-dual understanding that's expressed in mindfulness. In a talk on Christian non-duality and attention of the heart, Bourgeault speaks of objectless awareness, another term. There's different terms for this: non-dual awareness, objectless awareness, open awareness. And she says that shifting away from focusing on external or internal objects and instead configuring attention to rest in awareness itself. And she sees this as aligned with other spiritual traditions as well, as I do. Um, okay, all that to say, what's the big deal about that? Well, there are some practical applications in terms of what this does for us, and for our experience. And I think this is relevant for us, especially today, given the conflict and separation and strife that many of us are experiencing, personally and globally. So what we find, and it shows up in the research, is that open awareness helps loosen attachment to our own views and fosters a kind of openness to others. And it reduces the kind of rigidity that's born of a more narrow, contracted kind of practice. So non-dual awareness allows us to understand the other point of view or the other side, even with conflicting views. And not by abandoning our own view, but by loosening the kind of attachment to it, the emotional investment in it. In this way, non-dual awareness supports non-attachment and thereby opens up our thinking and flexibility in our thinking. So let's practice together, and during the practice, we'll start with paying attention, and then we'll see if we can kind of open that up to just simply being aware, being present. So begin by just paying attention to your own physical posture. This is an embodied posture. We call it mindfulness, which makes us think maybe it's all in our head, but this is embodied. So paying attention to our own body in the practice is important. And so just adjusting yourself. So there's a sense of groundedness in the low body and a sense of uprightness in the upper body. And let there be a soft, gentle, non-judgmental awareness of this sitting here. And if you like, you can close your eyes, or you can just lower your gaze down, softening your gaze. And then you might pay attention to the breath as a present moment object of awareness. So again, we do begin with this subject object. I'm paying attention to the breath. In order for it to be mindfulness, to move toward pure awareness, it's important that this be a non-judgmental awareness, that we practice non-judgmental awareness. Broad term for liking, disliking, adding our storyline. And as a way of working with your attention, just noticing the body and the breath as you sit here. And when the mind wanders, bring the attention back to the body and to the breath without evaluating or analyzing. And you might begin to notice other present moment experiences. And the way we pay attention is through the senses. So you might notice using your hearing the sounds that are emerging in this present moment. Not sounds you're creating, sounds that you're just tuning into. And doing your best to notice sounds in this moment without adding judgment, evaluations, reactions. And when the mind wanders off, which it will, and leaves this moment mentally, starts thinking ahead or going back, getting caught up in a story. As soon as you notice that, simply come back to paying attention to this present moment experiencing, noticing the body, noticing the breath, noticing sounds. Now shifting just a little bit to notice that you're that about not holding on to any one particular thing. So not looking for the breath or looking for sensations in the body or sounds, but just instead being completely open and receptive to whatever comes into the field of awareness. And doing your best to just let it all come and go and watching or witnessing in stillness without needing to do anything about it. This kind of non-dual or objectless awareness invites a state of being that's just being present without effort or judgment. So we're just sitting. So there's no specific object of attention to be turning to or returning to, but rather a more general awareness that's open and receptive to whatever arises. In a sense, you're immersing yourself in what's presenting rather than manipulating it or deciding. Here's a poem by John O'Donohue entitled For Presence. May you awaken to the mystery of being here and enter the quiet immensity of your own presence. May you have joy and peace in the temple of your senses. May you receive great encouragement when new frontiers beckon. May you respond to the call of your gift and find the courage to follow its path. May the flame of anger free you from falsity. May warmth of heart keep your presence aflame and anxiety never linger about you. May your outer dignity mirror an inner dignity of soul. May you take time to celebrate the quiet miracles that seek no attention. May you be consoled in the secret symmetry of your own soul. May you experience each day as a sacred gift woven around the heart of wonder. If your eyes have been closed or cast down, just raising them up. And we have a few minutes for any conversation, any comments or questions, insights.